Why is it so hard for leaders and media on both sides of the political aisle to be consistent in their support for law enforcement, rather than picking and choosing when they like them? For example, in the wake of the 2020 summer riots, I called for throwing the book at those who attacked police or even engaged in property damage. I supported local police departments across the country despite rampant and absurd calls to defund. I was attacked by many on the left for continuing to fight for my live police show to be back on the air. I feel the same way today, standing with federal law enforcement officers who are under fire since the FBI executed a search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. They are now literally being threatened. In a joint intelligence bulletin, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security warned of possible threats towards federal law enforcement coming from social media sites, web forums, video sharing platforms, image boards. This after 42-year-old Ricky Walter Schiffer allegedly wore a tactical vest and, armed with an AR-15 style rifle and a nail gun, attempted to forcibly enter the FBI's Cincinnati field office on Thursday. Now, fortunately, no agents or officers were injured. Schiffer was shot dead by authorities. An account linked to him posted increasingly violent threats against federal law enforcement in response to the FBI search at Mar-a-Lago. Today, we saw news that a Pennsylvania man was arrested for making threats against the FBI online. Authorities identified the man as 46-year-old Adam Bies and charged him with influencing, impeding, or retaliating against a federal law enforcement official after receiving a tip about his alleged post that read, in part, quote, "Every single piece of whatever who works for the FBI in any capacity, from the director down to the janitor who cleans their toilets, deserves to die. You've declared war on us, and now it's open season on you." He remains in custody tonight pending a detention hearing. Now, Fox News seems comparatively uninterested in the story of the ongoing threats against the FBI, as MSNBC and CNN seem to have little appetite for the difficulty police were facing in the wake of the George Floyd case. Since 2020, I've tried to hold accountable those on the far left, both politicians and media, who attack our police departments for political gain, including prominent people who say things that they shouldn't say. I've agreed with many Republicans that the idea of taking funds away from local police departments would be a complete disaster, and that, as we've seen, those funds quietly return to the departments after an increase in crime. Well, now it's some on the far right impugning and even pushing for the defunding of the FBI, without any evidence of wrongdoing in this case. And that has become downright dangerous. Some examples of hypocrisy. They're all over. But here's MSNBC's Jason Johnson, who in 2021 stood alongside some of the most radical calls against police, but radically changed his tone in 2022.
I've been saying we need to abolish American policing as it currently exists. It doesn't work. Policing doesn't work the way we're doing it right now.
He knows what they took, but have so far refused to make that public. And that's no coincidence. It allows the former president and his followers to dishonestly accuse the FBI, the same agency responsible for capturing the Oklahoma City bombers, Boston Marathon bombers, and some of the world's child predators, of planting evidence.
Oh, suddenly, law enforcement's great for all the accomplishments they've had. Meanwhile, in the right-wing media, seemed to be very much in line with me back in 2020, but have since changed course. Fox News host Jesse Waters is an example.
Whenever there's an emergency, who do you call? You call the police. When your baby stops breathing, when your friend gets raped, when your dad ODs, when your husband has a heart attack, when there's a massive collision on the highway, you call 911, and they're there to help. Without the police, there'd be no civilization. If you want to know how corrupt our FBI really is, just look at the people involved in yesterday's raid. Everyone's crooked, from the judge who signed the warrant to the attorney general to the guys running the FBI. The entire Justice Department is rotten to the core.
Right. It's exactly the same as those on the left say about the police in general. Some like Marjorie Taylor Greene looking to profit from it. She's been selling defund the FBI shirts on her website. Former President Trump has been raging against the FBI in multiple social media posts against the agency, including suggesting that they planted evidence. But it's not all Republicans. There are those calling this what it is, a dumb political stunt. Congressman Dan Crenshaw told Axios, quote, "I'm impressed Democrats finally got us to say defund the FBI. That makes you look unserious when you start talking like that." And then there's Fox and Friends host Steve Doocy, who said this.
It would be great for everybody to tamp down the rhetoric against the FBI, because the FBI simply was doing what the DOJ asked them to do. If the former president, who has always been a great supporter of law enforcement, had posed with 1,000 police departments coast to coast, it would be great if he called for an end to the violent rhetoric against federal law enforcement, and in particular, the FBI that was just doing their job.
Good for Steve Doocy. Good for him. Now, the boots on the ground in the FBI continue to shut out the noise, continue to do their job. The DOJ announced today an FBI-led nationwide sex trafficking operation located 84 minor victims and 37 actively missing children. But we need more leaders on both sides who will do exactly what Doocy was saying. Stand up by law enforcement, local and federal, from sweeping and unjustified attacks, particularly when the going gets tough. Joining me now is Phil Andrew, a former FBI special agent. Phil, thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it. How concerned are you for the safety of federal law enforcement right now?
This is very concerning at a time when we already have a number of international and domestic threats and just the regular operational work of federal law enforcement, and then the national setting of, this is a time where on-duty deaths of law enforcement are surging. And they're only being outpaced by suicides by officers. So we know that this is a very stressful job. It's hard work already. And this is actually the work of protecting America, of exactly like the operation today, bringing back children that have been absconded with, holding the line against Russian, Chinese, and North Korean and Iranian operations, intelligence operations, and fighting Al-Qaeda. This is the work of federal law enforcement. And this is a terrible distraction from their work to now be threatened by what seems to be kind of folks that, out there on the internet, the millions of folks that hear these messages that kind of encourage this. Some actually act on it.
Local law enforcement around the country are having very serious problems with recruitment, large numbers of retirements, et cetera, because a lot of these cops are just deciding it's not worth it. Increased crime, being disrespected in the public, in the media, et cetera, and they're just going looking for other jobs. Is that happening in the FBI, or do you expect it will?
Well, I think that we're seeing less applicants for government roles and law enforcement across the board, largely because of this atmosphere that's been created that makes this a seemingly less desirable or honorable job. And the truth is that these are Americans. The folks that I worked with, the FBI, had gone through, in some cases, years of vetting and lots of additional training and education just to have a shot at it. And these are folks that are swearing their loyalty to their country and the Constitution, and really holding the line on some very, very dangerous threats that are constant.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.